Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, I'm bringing you 3 deeply disturbing stories that will remind you why we lock our doors, why we stay alert when we're alone, and why sometimes the scariest moments happen in places we thought were safe. These aren't urban legends or fictional tales designed to give you a quick scare. These are real experiences from real people who found themselves in situations where their safety was threatened, where split-second decisions meant the difference between survival and tragedy. Before we dive in, I want to know, have you ever been home alone and heard something that made your blood run cold? That moment when you're not sure if you're overreacting or if you're actually in danger. Drop a comment and share your experience. Because sometimes that instinct, that gut feeling, is the only thing standing between you and something terrible. What you're about to hear will make you double-check your locks tonight, make you more aware of your surroundings, and remind you that the world can be a dangerous place when we let our guard down. Alright, let's begin. And remember, every word of these stories is true. Story 1, The Weekend at the Estate. This happened when I was 20 years old. I'm 22 now, so it's not that long ago. The memories are still vivid, still sharp enough to make me anxious when I think about them too much. While I was in college, I worked as a babysitter during the week for a family near campus. It was easy money, good hours, and the kids were sweet. But I also had a weekend gig that paid significantly better. I would nanny for this wealthy family who traveled constantly. The arrangement was perfect for a broke college student. They'd go away most weekends, sometimes just Saturday and Sunday, sometimes longer trips, and I'd stay at their house with their 2 kids. They had a whole dedicated guest bedroom just for me, stocked with nice linens and toiletries. The family was incredibly generous and kind. It was honestly a dream job while it lasted. This particular incident happened in the fall. Late October, I think. The leaves were all falling and it was getting chilly outside, that perfect autumn weather where you need a jacket in the evening but it's still pleasant during the day. I arrived at the house Friday afternoon around 4 p.m. The parents were already packed and ready to leave for some charity gala in the city that required them to stay overnight. The kids I was watching were James, who was 7, and Jessica, who was 5. I'll use those fake names for privacy. Both of them were adorable, well-behaved kids who I'd been watching for almost 6 months at that point. Their bedtimes were 7:30 for Jessica and 8:30 for James, which meant I'd have most of the evening to myself once they went down. During the day, I'd play with each of them in their separate toy rooms. This family was seriously wealthy, like, more money than I could comprehend. They had 2 entire rooms dedicated to toys. One for Jessica, one for James. Jessica loved her dolls and dollhouses. She had this massive Victorian-style dollhouse that was probably worth more than my car, with tiny furniture and little doll families. I spent hours playing elaborate storylines with her. James was into video games. He had every gaming system you could imagine and a TV bigger than most movie theater screens. I'd watch him play and cheer him on. The house itself was gorgeous. A massive property, probably 5 or 6 acres, with a big pond right in the middle. There was a separate 3-car garage with an apartment above it for guests. And across the pond, there was a pool with a pool house that was nicer than most people's actual houses. The pool house was basically a luxury rec room. It had a full bar, pool table, dartboards, arcade games, a giant flat-screen TV, and multiple leather sofas. Like something out of a magazine. The family was so over-the-top wealthy that they'd even installed an intercom system connecting the pool house to the main house. If you pressed a button on the wall in either location, it would ring like a phone, and you could talk through speakers. The parents had it installed so they could call the kids in for dinner when they were swimming without having to walk all the way across the property. The pool house also had this huge window that overlooked the pond with a perfect view of the main house. You could see pretty much the entire back of the house from there. After the kids went to bed that Friday night, I was free to do whatever I wanted. The parents trusted me completely and were always generous about letting me help myself to their food, use their amenities, watch their TV. The only real rule was no friends over. Which I totally respected. This was their home, their kids' safety was my responsibility, and I wasn't going to abuse their trust. I usually spent my evenings FaceTiming friends and watching movies in the pool house. It was honestly not a bad place to kill time, way nicer than my cramped dorm room. Around 9:30 p.m., I started getting hungry. I walked back across the property to the main house, maybe a 2-minute walk from the pool house to the back door, and entered the code on the keypad lock to let myself in. The parents had given me the code on my first day. 6 digits, easy to remember. I went to the kitchen and started rummaging through their pantry and fridge. They kept it stocked with so much food and snacks that I was always allowed to help myself to whatever I wanted. I grabbed a frozen snack from the freezer, some kind of gourmet pizza pocket thing, and threw it in the microwave. While I waited for it to heat up, I scrolled through my phone, texting friends, checking Instagram, the usual. Once it was done, I grabbed my food and headed back across the property to the pool house. I liked hanging out there more than in the main house after the kids went to bed. I could be louder on my phone calls, have the TV as loud as I wanted, blast music without worrying about waking James or Jessica. I settled onto one of the big leather couches, put on the movie White Chicks, one of my comfort movies that I've seen probably 50 times, and started eating and texting my friends. I was in the middle of telling my group chat how great this gig was when the intercom suddenly went off with this loud beeping sound that made me jump so hard I almost dropped my phone. My heart was racing as I walked over to the intercom panel on the wall and pressed the answer button. "Hello?" Jessica's small, scared voice came through the speaker. "I'm scared. I keep hearing noises." This wasn't unusual. Jessica sometimes had trouble sleeping, especially if she'd had an exciting day or eaten too much sugar before bed. I'd had to go tuck her back in a few times over the months I'd been watching her. "It's okay, sweetie," I said into the intercom. "I'm coming right now." I set my food down on the coffee table and headed back across the yard to the main house, jogging a little because I could tell from her voice that she was genuinely frightened. I punched in the code, let myself in through the back door, and went straight to Jessica's room. She must have run straight back to bed after using the intercom because she was already under her covers, her stuffed unicorn clutched to her chest. "Hey, Jess," I said softly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "What kind of noises did you hear?" "Like, creaky noises," she said. "Like someone walking." "It's just the house settling," I told her, which is what my mom always told me when I was scared as a kid. "Old houses make lots of noises. There's nothing to be scared of, I promise." I tickled her a little to make her laugh, then tucked the blankets up around her chin the way she liked. "Better?" She nodded, already looking sleepy again. "Good night, sweetheart. I'm right across the yard if you need me, okay?" I left her room, pulled the door mostly closed, and walked back down the hallway toward the kitchen. I was planning to grab a bottle of wine to take back to the pool house, something fancy from the parents' collection that I'd been eyeing. They told me I was welcome to have wine if I wanted, as long as I was responsible. As I was rummaging through drawers looking for a wine opener, I heard something that made me freeze. A sound. A creaking sound. Coming from somewhere else in the house. The exact kind of sound Jessica had described. I stood completely still, holding my breath, listening intently. The house was old, probably built in the 1920s and renovated extensively. Old houses make noise. I knew that. But this sound, it was different from normal settling noises. It sounded like weight on a floorboard. Like someone taking a step. I stared in the direction the sound had come from, toward the front of the house, near the formal living room that the family rarely used. I waited for another sound. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Nothing. I was being paranoid. Jessica had gotten in my head with her talk about noises. I was psyching myself out. I abandoned the wine search, suddenly didn't feel like drinking anymore, and headed back outside, locking the door behind me with the keypad. I walked quickly back across the lawn to the pool house, my eyes occasionally darting back to the main house as if I might see something in the windows. I sat back down on the couch and tried to resume eating my now lukewarm food. White Chicks were still playing, but I wasn't really watching anymore. I was mostly just scrolling on my phone, trying to distract myself from the uneasy feeling that had settled in my stomach. Then the intercom went off again, and I swear my heart almost stopped. I jumped up and rushed over to press the answer button. "Jessica?" Silence. Not complete silence, though. I could hear something. Breathing. Faint, but definitely there. "Jessica? James?" I said, my voice tighter now. "Is everything okay?" More silence. More breathing. "Hello?" I said louder. "Who is this?" Nothing. Just that faint sound that could have been breathing or could have been static. I pressed the button again. "If you can hear me, say something." The line went dead. The intercom clicked off. I stood there staring at the intercom panel, my mind racing. That wasn't normal. The kids wouldn't just press the button and not say anything. And that breathing sound? I grabbed my phone and called my friend Kelsey. She answered on the third ring, already laughing at something in the background. "Hey. What's up?" "Kelsey, I need you to come here. Right now." "What? Why? What's wrong?" "I'm freaking out," I said, my voice shaking. The little girl said she heard noises, and then I heard a noise in the house, and then someone pressed the intercom button but didn't say anything when I answered, and I'm really scared and I don't want to be here alone." "Okay, first of all, you need to calm down," Kelsey said, but she sounded concerned now too. "You're probably just psyching yourself out. Kids hear noises all the time. And maybe one of them pressed the intercom by accident." "But there was breathing, Kelsey. I heard someone breathing. Could have been one of the kids breathing. Or could have been static. Those intercom systems are old." I wanted to believe her. I wanted this to have a simple explanation. But I was still staring out the window at the main house, and that's when I saw it. The hallway lights turned on. The lights in the upstairs hallway, visible through the windows. "Kelsey," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "The hallway lights just turned on. So? Maybe one of the kids got up to use the bathroom." But that's when I saw the figure. A person. A grown adult. Walking across the upstairs hallway, visible through the window for just a moment before moving out of view. Not a child. Not even close. This was a full-sized adult man. I screamed. Actually screamed. And dropped my phone. I could hear Kelsey's tinny voice calling my name from the phone on the floor, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what I'd just seen. A stranger was in the house. In the house with James and Jessica, two little kids who I was supposed to be protecting. I snatched my phone off the floor and hung up on Kelsey without explanation. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely dial 911. The operator answered immediately. 911, what's your emergency? "There's someone in the house," I said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm babysitting two kids and there's a man in the house with them and I'm across the property in the pool house and I don't know what to do." "Okay, I need you to slow down and tell me exactly what's happening." And then I remembered, the intercom was still on. I'd pressed the button to answer it, but I'd never pressed it again to hang up. Which meant whoever was in that house could hear everything I was saying. "The intercom," I said into the phone, but also loudly enough for the intercom to pick up. "I'm calling 911 right now. The police are coming. You need to leave those kids alone and get out." I was crying now, barely able to get the words out. The 911 operator was asking me questions. My location, the address, whether I could see the intruder, whether he had weapons. I kept shouting the address into the phone, begging her to please hurry, please send someone immediately. "Are the children safe?" the operator asked. "No." I sobbed. "They're in the house with him. They're upstairs in their bedrooms and he's up there with them." Through my panic, through my tears, through the operator's voice trying to keep me calm, I heard something that made my blood turn to ice. A scream. A child's scream. Coming through the intercom. "Jessica. Oh my God," I wailed, falling to my knees. "Oh my God, he's hurting them. Please send help, please." "The police are on their way," the operator said firmly. "They're almost there. I need you to stay on the line with me." But then I heard Jessica's voice through the intercom, clearer now, calling my name. I crawled across the floor to the intercom and pressed the button. "Jessica. I'm here, sweetie, I'm here." "There's a man," she sobbed. "There's a man in the house and I'm scared." "I know, baby, I know. Listen to me carefully. Can you get to James's room?" "I think so." "Good. Go get your brother right now and both of you go to the back door. The door I always use. Can you do that?" "I'm scared," she whimpered. "I know you're scared, but you need to be very brave right now. Get James and get to that back door. I'm going to meet you there, okay? But you have to run as fast as you can." "Okay," she whispered. I dropped the phone. The 911 operator was still talking but I couldn't hear her over the sound of my own heartbeat, and ran. I ran out of the pool house, across the lawn, across the entire property faster than I'd ever run in my life. I reached the back door just as it opened from the inside. Jessica and James burst out, both of them crying, both of them terrified. I grabbed them, one in each arm, and turned around, running back toward the pool house with both kids. "Don't look back," I told them. "Just keep running." We made it to the pool house and I pulled them inside, locking the door behind us. I turned off all the lights immediately, didn't want whoever was in the main house to be able to see us through the windows. Both kids were crying. James was asking what was happening. Jessica was clinging to me so tightly I could barely breathe. I found my phone on the floor where I'd dropped it. The 911 operator was still on the line. "I have the kids," I told her. "We're in the pool house. We're safe for now." "The police are pulling up to the property right now," she said. "Stay where you are. Officers will come to you." Those words, "the police are here," were the most beautiful words I'd ever heard in my life. I held both kids close to me, sitting on the floor with my back against the door, and waited. Maybe 30 seconds later, I saw flashlights sweeping across the lawn, coming toward us. "Police," a voice called out. "Is anyone in the pool house?" "Yes," I shouted back. "We're in here. We're okay." A female officer opened the door carefully and shined her flashlight inside. "It's okay," she said gently. "You're safe now. Come with me." She led us outside where there were already 3 or 4 police cars in the driveway, with more arriving as we watched. Another officer, a kind-looking man with gray hair, took the kids to one of the cars to keep them warm and calm while other officers talked to me. I answered all their questions. Explained about the intercom, about seeing the figure in the window, about the kids running out of the house. I must have been there for 20 minutes, wrapped in a blanket someone had given me, shaking and crying, when I heard one of the officers radio in, "Suspect in custody." They'd found him. They brought him out in handcuffs a few minutes later. He was maybe 6 feet tall, wearing dark clothes, with this awful, vacant look in his eyes. As they walked him past the cars, past all of us witnesses, he turned his head and looked directly at me. I will never forget his face. It was wrong, somehow. Asymmetrical in a way that made my skin crawl. His eyes were too close together. His mouth was slightly twisted. He looked exactly like what I imagine when people say someone looks like the product of incest. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but it's the truth. The parents were called immediately, of course. They were at their gala when they got the news that someone had broken into their home while their children were there. They left immediately and drove back, but it was a 2-hour drive. By the time they arrived, everything was basically over. The police explained that they needed to process the scene, take evidence, all of that. So we couldn't stay in the house that night anyway. The parents arranged for the kids to stay with their aunt, the mom's sister, who lived about 30 minutes away. She came and picked them up, taking the rest of the weekend off work to care for them. As for me, the police took my full statement, got my contact information, and told me I was free to go home. I drove back to my dorm in complete shock. I don't even really remember the drive. I just remember sitting in my parking spot outside my building, staring at nothing, unable to process what had just happened. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't even try. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure in the window. Or worse, I imagined what might have happened if I hadn't seen him, if I hadn't called 911, if the kids hadn't been able to get out. The next day, the parents called me. They were incredibly kind, incredibly apologetic, even though none of it was their fault. They told me they were pressing charges to the fullest extent of the law. With their resources, and they had considerable resources, they were going to make sure this man faced serious consequences. They also told me that they completely understood if I didn't want to work for them anymore. That they'd pay me for the full month regardless, and they'd give me a glowing reference for any future jobs. I told them I appreciated everything, but I couldn't come back. Not to that house. Not after what had happened. The truth is, I was haunted by that night. I had nightmares for months. I'd wake up in a panic, thinking I heard the intercom going off, seeing that figure walking past the window. I can only imagine how scarred those poor kids were. Jessica and James. They were so young. 5 and 7 years old. I hope they're okay. I hope they've recovered from the trauma. I hope they don't remember it as vividly as I do. But I suspect they do. Because some things, some nights, some moments of pure terror, you never really forget them. They stay with you. In the dark. When you're alone. When you hear a noise you can't explain. Story 2, The Campsite Visitor. I was 28 years old when this happened, solo camping in a local woodland with my beagle Reggie. I'd done solo camping trips dozens of times before. I'm an experienced outdoorsman, comfortable in the wilderness, knowledgeable about safety protocols. But this trip taught me that experience doesn't matter when you encounter something, or someone, truly dangerous in the middle of nowhere. It was November. Late November, actually, probably 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. The weather was still mildly warm during the day, maybe mid-50s, but at night it would drop into the low 30s. Cold enough that you needed proper gear. I came prepared. I always do. I brought my portable fire pit, lighter fluid, a lighter, and an axe for chopping wood. I also brought my tent, a good quality sleeping bag rated for cold weather, and my fishing gear so I could try my luck at the lake. I'd packed enough food to last the full 2 days I planned to be there, but if I managed to catch some decent-sized fish, I intended to cook and eat them. Part of the appeal of solo camping is that self-sufficiency, that connection with nature. Reggie, my beagle, had been on plenty of these trips with me. He's a good camping dog, alert, well-trained, but also content to just hang out by the fire. I hiked from where I'd parked my truck about a mile into the forest until I was close enough to the lake. I found a nice clearing that looked perfect for a campsite and started setting up. The plan was simple: fish a little, hike a little, cook over the fire, read by lantern light, and just decompress from the stress of work and daily life. I brought Reggie with me down to the lake to fish that first afternoon. The water was calm, the weather was perfect, and I felt completely at peace. I caught a couple smaller fish, nothing really worth the effort of cleaning and cooking, so I threw them back in. But something was bothering Reggie. He kept looking into the forest behind us, his body going rigid, his tail stopping mid-wag. I figured he was probably seeing or hearing some small animals. Squirrels, maybe, or rabbits. The woods were full of wildlife, and Reggie, being a beagle, had strong hunting instincts. But he's well trained. He doesn't go running off. So I didn't bother with a leash, just kept an eye on him while I fished. After maybe an hour with no real luck, I decided to take Reggie on a hike around the lake. It was a nice trail, maybe 3 miles to circle the whole thing. When we were directly across the lake from our campsite, about as far away as you could get while still staying on the trail, I happened to glance back in that direction. And I saw what looked like 2 or 3 people walking into the woods. They were far away, maybe a quarter mile, so it was hard to tell for certain. But they definitely looked like people, not deer or other animals. And they were right around the area where I'd set up my campsite. My immediate thought was that I was about to get robbed. That these were thieves who targeted campers, stealing gear while people were away from their sites. "Come on, Reggie," I said, and we started making our way quickly back around the lake. We got back to the campsite maybe 15 minutes later, and my concerns were immediately confirmed. My tent zipper was open. Fully unzipped, the flap pulled to the side. I always zip my tent completely closed when I leave it. Always. It keeps bugs out and signals to animals that there's a barrier there. Someone had definitely gone through my tent. I checked my belongings carefully. Surprisingly, nothing appeared to be missing. Not my spare clothes, not my camping stove, not even my wallet which I'd stupidly left inside. But that almost made it worse. If they weren't stealing, what were they doing? Why go through someone's tent and not take anything? Just to let me know they'd been there? To intimidate me? To mark me as a target? The whole situation gave me a deeply uneasy feeling. To be safe, I decided to move my campsite. I spent the next hour or so packing everything up and relocating to a different spot maybe a quarter mile up the shore. Different clearing, different angle, harder to spot from the main trail. Once I was set up again, I started gathering wood and chopping it with my axe. I got a good fire going in my portable fire pit and started to relax a little. Maybe those people had just been curious. Maybe they'd been looking for a campsite themselves and had been checking to see if mine was occupied before setting up nearby. I fed Reggie his dinner, then heated up a can of chili for myself over the fire. We sat together as the sun went down, and I wrote in my journal, something I always do on camping trips to clear my head. That's when Reggie started barking at something in the forest. It was dark by this point, probably around 8 p.m. The fire provided the only real light, creating a circle of visibility maybe 20 feet in diameter. Beyond that, nothing but darkness. I looked in the direction Reggie was barking but couldn't see anything. "What is it, boy?" I asked, scanning the tree line. He kept barking, increasingly agitated, staring into the blackness beyond the firelight. Could be a deer. Could be a raccoon. Could be lots of things. But it also could be people. The same people who'd gone through my tent earlier. On that unsettling thought, I decided to put out the fire. If there were people out in these woods watching campers, I didn't want to advertise my exact location with a bright campfire visible from anywhere on the lake. I brought Reggie inside the tent with me and zipped it fully closed. I got into my sleeping bag and used my reading light to look at my book for a while. But I wasn't really reading. I was listening. And so was Reggie. His ears kept moving, tracking sounds I couldn't hear. He kept looking around at the tent walls, occasionally letting out a low growl. "What is it, boy?" I kept asking, but he couldn't tell me. Could only react to whatever he was hearing out there. Eventually, he seemed to settle down. His head went down onto his paws, his breathing slowed. He was falling asleep. With that, I figured whatever had been bothering him was gone. I turned off my lantern and tried to sleep too. I woke up hours later, I'm not sure exactly what time, but it was deep night. Reggie was growling again, low and continuous. "Reggie, quiet," I whispered, not wanting to make noise. But he wouldn't stop. And then I heard why. Someone was whistling. The kind of whistling you do to a dog to get their attention. A high, sharp whistle, repeated twice. Reggie started growling louder in response. "Shh," I said, putting my hand on him. "Quiet, boy." The whistling came again. Then a clicking noise, someone making clicking sounds with their tongue. The kind of sound you make to call a dog. Someone was definitely out there, trying to get Reggie's attention. Trying to lure him out. But why? What possible reason could someone have for trying to call someone else's dog in the middle of the night in the middle of the woods? Then I heard footsteps. Heavy footsteps, definitely human, getting closer to my tent. They walked right up to the tent and stopped. Right outside. So close I could have reached through the fabric and touched whoever it was. Reggie went ballistic. Howling, barking, lunging at the tent wall. I grabbed him and held him, trying to keep him quiet without speaking, without making any human sounds that would confirm there was a person in here. Without the fire, it was completely silent except for the wind in the trees and Reggie's muffled growling against my chest. Then another whistle, right outside the tent. So close it felt like the person was inches away from my head with only the thin tent fabric between us. Reggie tried to bark but I held him tighter, and he subsided into a continuous low growl. I was absolutely terrified. My heart was pounding so hard I thought the person outside could probably hear it. I needed to do something. Say something. Let them know I was aware of them, that I wasn't an easy target. I tried to make my voice deep and commanding, "You better get the hell out of here. I have a gun." But my voice came out shaky and scared instead. Completely unconvincing. The footsteps started moving away from the tent. Slow, heavy steps, not hurried at all. Like whoever it was wasn't the slightest bit concerned about my threat. The footsteps faded away into the distance. Or maybe they just stopped. I couldn't tell. Reggie kept growling on and off for the next hour. Just sporadic growls, his body tense, his attention focused on the tent door. I couldn't sleep. Didn't even try. Just lay there in the darkness, holding my dog, listening for any sound of someone approaching. Then, probably around 3 o'clock or 4 a.m., I heard something that made me seriously consider whether I was about to die in these woods. A scream. A woman's scream. Distant but clearly audible, echoing across the lake and through the trees. It wasn't the kind of scream you make when you're startled or playing around. This was a genuine scream of terror. The kind of sound someone makes when they're in mortal danger. It probably echoed for miles. And it sounded like a woman screaming for her life. That was it. That was the final straw. I grabbed Reggie, didn't bother packing anything, threw on my boots, grabbed my flashlight, and ran. I ran through the dark forest, stumbling over roots and rocks, not caring about noise or caution, just needing to get back to my truck. I made it back to where I'd parked, thank God I remembered the way even in the dark, and Reggie and I both jumped into the cab. I still had no cell reception out there. The nearest tower was probably 10 miles away. So I did something I'd never done on a camping trip before. I slept in my truck. Doors locked, Reggie on the passenger seat beside me, my knife on the dashboard within reach. I didn't sleep well. Maybe got 2 hours total, waking up at every sound. When dawn finally broke around 6:30 a.m., I felt safe enough to go back into the woods to retrieve my gear. I brought Reggie with me for safety and walked back to the campsite I'd abandoned in the night. Everything was still there. Nothing had been taken or destroyed. But when I started packing up my tent, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The zipper was partially unzipped again. Not all the way, just about 6 inches. I knew, I'd zipped it completely closed before I ran. I distinctly remembered doing it, almost like a reflex. Which meant someone had come back to my campsite after I'd fled. Had unzipped my tent. Had looked inside. Had seen that I was gone. I packed everything as quickly as possible, constantly looking over my shoulder, convinced I was being watched. I got everything loaded into my truck in record time and got the hell out of there. As soon as I had cell reception, about 20 minutes down the road, I called the non-emergency police number to report what had happened. The suspicious people around my campsite, the whistling, the woman's scream. The officer I spoke to took down all the information and said they'd send someone to check out the area. Asked if I wanted to file a formal report. I said yes. Even though I knew there probably wasn't much they could do. I don't know what became of that report. Don't know if they found anything or anyone in those woods. But I know this, I will never go camping at that location again. Will never go solo camping anywhere without telling someone exactly where I'll be and checking in regularly. Because I don't know what was going on in those woods that night. Don't know who those people were or what they wanted. but I know they were dangerous. Know they were stalking me, trying to lure my dog away, circling my campsite in the middle of the night. And I know that woman's scream was real. That somewhere in those woods, something terrible happened to someone. I just hope I wasn't supposed to be the next victim. Story 3, Home Alone. I was home alone one night. To understand this story properly, I need to explain the layout of our house. Our house is a split-level design. The upstairs is basically a separate apartment. My brother and I live up there with our own kitchen, bathroom, living area, the whole deal. Our parents live downstairs in what's essentially their own apartment. It's a pretty nice setup, honestly. We're all close as a family, but everyone has their own space and privacy. It was a weekend night, Saturday, I think, and I was staying in. It was raining pretty heavily outside, so when I texted my friends earlier to see if anyone wanted to do anything, everyone had declined. So I'd resigned myself to a quiet night in, which I didn't really mind. Sometimes it's nice to just relax by yourself. I decided to watch some scary movies in my room. I'd been meaning to watch Dr. Sleep for a while, the sequel to The Shining, and figured this was the perfect night for it. I got comfortable on my bed with snacks and drinks within reach and started the movie. I was pretty into it, actually. The movie was well made and genuinely creepy. I was about an hour in when I paused it to go grab something from the kitchen. I walked down the hallway to our kitchen and went to the pantry closet, looking for something salty to balance out all the sweet stuff I'd been eating. While I was standing there looking at the shelves, I heard a sound from downstairs. From my parents' apartment. Just a thud or a bump. Nothing alarming. Houses make noises all the time. I grabbed a box of crackers, closed the pantry door, and headed back to my room. Closed the door behind me and unpaused the movie. A few minutes later, I noticed something odd. The backyard motion sensor light was on. I could see it through my window, that bright security light that's triggered by movement. Could have been a deer. Or a raccoon. We get lots of wildlife in our backyard. But then I heard more sounds from downstairs. Right below my bedroom. And these sounds were more distinct. More clearly human. It sounded like the back door opening and closing. A very specific sound I'd heard thousands of times living in this house. I paused the movie and listened more carefully. Footsteps. Definitely footsteps. Someone walking around downstairs. I grabbed my phone and opened our family group chat. Who just got home? I typed. My mom responded within about a minute, "We're not home. Still at dinner with the Johnsons." Why? My stomach dropped. "Alex, is that you?" I typed, referring to my brother. He wasn't supposed to be home tonight. He told me earlier he was staying at his girlfriend's place. But maybe his plans had changed. No response from Alex. I hear someone downstairs. I typed to the group. "Alex, is that you?" Still no response from my brother. But now I could hear the footsteps more clearly because I turned off the movie. They were walking across the downstairs, from the back of the house toward the front. Heavy footsteps. Definitely not my imagination. Then I heard them coming up the stairs. The stairs that connected my parents' apartment to ours. There's only one set of stairs between the two levels. And someone was climbing them right now. I turned off my TV completely, plunging my room into relative darkness, just the glow from my phone screen. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and started coming down the hallway. Our upstairs hallway has 4 doors, 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and the kitchen. My room is at the end. And the footsteps were coming straight toward my room. Not stopping at any of the other doors. Not pausing or exploring. Just walking directly to my bedroom like whoever it was knew exactly where they were going. I did the only thing I could think of. I lay completely still in my bed and closed my eyes, pretending to be asleep. I kept my eyes squeezed almost shut, just barely squinting them open enough to see blurry shapes. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. Then my door opened. Slowly. The hinges creaking slightly. I could hear my own heartbeat, deafeningly loud in my ears. I tried to keep my breathing steady and slow, like someone who's actually asleep. Through my barely open eyes, I saw a shape in the doorway. A person's head and shoulders, silhouetted against the slightly lighter hallway. They were looking into my room. Looking at me. It was too dark to see their face. I could only make out the general shape, the position of their head. But I could see their eyes. Catching some light from somewhere, reflecting it back. Staring directly at me. This wasn't Alex. I could tell from the size, the posture, the complete wrongness of the silhouette. My brother is tall and lanky. This person was stockier, broader. A complete stranger was standing in my bedroom doorway, watching me pretend to sleep. They stood there for what felt like an eternity. Probably only 30 seconds or a minute, but time does weird things when you're terrified and pretending to be unconscious. I could feel their eyes on me. Could sense them evaluating, deciding. Then, finally, they pulled back and slowly closed my door. But I didn't hear footsteps walking away. The floorboard right outside my room creaked slightly, the one that always creaks, but then nothing. Just silence. They were still standing right outside my door. My hands were shaking as I pulled my phone under my covers and opened the family group chat again. "Alex, please tell Emmy that's you in the house," I typed in all capitals. He responded almost immediately, "No, what are you talking about?" "Someone is in the house," I typed back. "Someone just opened my door and looked at me." My mom started calling me immediately, but I declined the call, couldn't risk making noise. Instead, I dialed 911. 911, "What's your emergency?" "Someone's in my house," I whispered as quietly as I possibly could. "I'm home alone and someone just came into my room." "What's your address?" I whispered the address. "Are you safe right now? Are you locked in a room?" "I'm in my bedroom but there's no lock. He's right outside my door. I can hear him." "Okay, stay on the line with me. Police are being dispatched to your location right now. Do you know how many people are in your house?" "Just one, I think. I only heard one person." That's when I heard the footsteps start moving again. Walking away from my door, back down the hallway toward the stairs. "He's leaving," I whispered to the dispatcher. "He's going back downstairs." "Stay where you are," she instructed. "Don't leave your room until officers arrive." I could hear the footsteps going down the stairs. Then silence. I waited, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the dispatcher's calm voice telling me help was on the way, that everything would be okay, that I just needed to stay put. About 5 minutes later, 5 of the longest minutes of my life, there was a knock on the downstairs door. "Police," a male voice called out. That's our officers," the dispatcher said. "You can go let them in now." I crept out of my room, down the hallway, down the stairs, and to the door. I could see 2 uniformed police officers through the window. I opened the door and they immediately came inside. "Where did you see the intruder?" one officer asked. He came upstairs, walked down the hallway, opened my bedroom door and looked at me, then went back downstairs. The 2 officers, one male, one female, searched the entire house methodically. Every room, every closet, under every bed. It took maybe 15 minutes. When they finished, they came back to where I was standing in the kitchen, trying to stop shaking. "The house is clear," the male officer said. "There's no one here now. Do you know how they got in?" "I think through the back door. That's where I heard the first sounds." We all walked to the back door. It was unlocked. "One of my parents must have left it unlocked when they left," I said, feeling sick. "We usually lock it, but sometimes they forget." The officers told me to make sure all the doors were locked now, that I should probably call my parents and have someone come home to stay with me, and that if anything else happened I should call 911 again immediately. They asked if I wanted to come to the station to give a more detailed statement. I said I'd come tomorrow, I couldn't deal with it right then. After they left, I called my parents. My mom said they were leaving the restaurant immediately and would be home in 20 minutes. But I was alone in the house again. Alone with all the lights on, every door and window checked and double-checked, sitting in the kitchen with a knife from the knife block sitting next to me on the table. Just in case. About 10 minutes after the police left, the backyard motion light came on again. My heart stopped. I walked slowly to the window and looked out into the backyard. And I saw him. A man, walking away from the back door, across the lawn, into the far corner of the backyard where the light barely reached. He looked back once, toward the house, toward me, and then disappeared into the shadows. He tried to get back in. The locked door had stopped him. I grabbed my phone and called 911 again, but by the time I explained what I'd seen, by the time officers arrived again, he was long gone. They searched the backyard and the surrounding area but found nothing. My parents got home about 5 minutes after the police arrived the second time. My mom immediately wrapped me in a hug and I finally broke down crying. I've never felt as scared as I did that night. The violation of having someone in my house, in my space, opening my bedroom door while I was alone and vulnerable. And the image, God, the image of that person's head silhouetted in my doorway, those eyes reflecting light, staring at me while I pretended to sleep. That image is going to stay with me forever. All because someone forgot to lock a door. That's all it took. One unlocked door and a stranger was in my house, in my room, standing over my bed. Lock your doors, everyone. Every single time. Day and night. Even if you're just running out for 5 minutes. Because all it takes is one time, one moment of forgetting, one unlocked door, for something terrible to happen. I learned that lesson the hard way. Don't learn it the same way I did. 3 people. 3 situations where safety was just an illusion, where danger came from where it wasn't expected, where split-second decisions and pure luck made the difference between surviving and becoming a victim. I want to thank everyone who shared their experiences. These stories are reminders that we live in a world where threats are real, where we need to stay alert, where we can't let our guard down even in places we think are safe. If you found these stories valuable, please like and subscribe. And if you've had your own experience with a home invasion, a threatening situation, or a moment where you realized you were in danger, share your story in the comments. These experiences need to be heard, need to be shared, need to be taken seriously. Stay safe out there. Lock your doors. Trust your instincts. Stay aware of your surroundings. And remember, complacency is dangerous. The moment you think that could never happen to me, is the moment you're most vulnerable. Until next time.